warfare has always been a brutal aspect of human history. Throughout the ages, different civilizations and military powers have developed and employed various ruthless techniques and systems to gain the upper hand over their enemies. Today, we're going to discuss 10 of the most ruthless war techniques that have shaped history. Number 10. Scorched Earth Policy. The Scorched Earth Policy is a military strategy that involves the intentional destruction of anything that could be of use to an invading force. This typically includes crops, livestock, infrastructure such as bridges and roads, and resources like food and water. The goal of the Scorched Earth Policy is to deny the enemy the ability to sustain itself and to make the occupied territory as inhospitable as possible. The technique has been used throughout history by various civilizations. For example, the Russians used it against Napoleon's invading army in 1812. They burned crops and destroyed villages, which contributed to Napoleon's eventual defeat. Similarly, the Germans used scorched earth in World War II as they retreated from the advancing Soviet forces. They systematically destroyed factories, farms, and infrastructure to prevent the Soviets from utilizing them. This policy, although effective in denying resources to the enemy, has severe consequences for the civilian population, often resulting in famine, displacement, and death. As such, it raises ethical questions about the balance between military necessity and the protection of civilian lives and well-being. Number 9. Siege warfare. Siege warfare is a form of military operation in which an armed force surrounds a city or fortified position, usually intending to capture it by cutting off its resources and forcing the defenders to surrender. Sieges are among the oldest forms of warfare, dating back to ancient times when humans first built fortifications to protect themselves and their resources. One of the most famous sieges in history was the Siege of Leningrad during World War II. It lasted from 1941 to 1944 and is considered one of the longest and most devastating sieges in modern history. During the siege, German and Finnish forces surrounded the city of Leningrad, cutting off its food and supply lines. This led to widespread starvation, disease, and despair among the civilian population. Thousands of people died each day from hunger and related illnesses, and the siege became a symbol of the human cost of war. Despite the brutality involved in siege warfare, it remains a common tactic in military conflicts. Number 8. Chemical weapons. Chemical weapons are a broad category of military and terrorist weapons that utilize chemical substances to cause harm, injury, or death. These weapons are designed to exploit the chemical properties of certain substances to create harmful effects such as burns, respiratory failure, and organ damage. Mustard gas, also known as sulfur mustard, was widely used in World War I, particularly by the Germans and the British. It was deployed in artillery shells, rockets, and bombs, causing horrific injuries to soldiers and civilians alike. Despite international efforts to ban chemical weapons, they have continued to be used in various conflicts throughout history. For example, during the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, both sides reportedly used chemical weapons on each other. The use of chemical weapons is a serious violation of international law and is considered a war crime. Number 7. Biological warfare. Biological warfare involves the use of biological toxins, bacteria, viruses, or other disease-causing agents to harm or incapacitate humans, animals, or plants. Throughout history, various civilizations have explored the use of biological weapons, often with devastating consequences. One of the earliest documented instances of biological warfare occurred during the Middle Ages, when catapults were used to hurl plague-infected corpses over the walls of besieged cities. This gruesome tactic aimed to spread disease and weaken the enemy's resistance. Likewise, during World War II, Japan's Unit 731 conducted horrific experiments on living humans, exposing them to biological agents such as plague, anthrax, and cholera. The use of biological weapons in warfare raises profound ethical questions and is prohibited by international law and the Geneva Convention. Number 6. Total war. Total war refers to a military conflict in which all of a nation's resources, including its economy, infrastructure, and manpower, are dedicated to the military effort. Unlike traditional wars, which typically involve two opposing sides, total war often involves multiple nations and can encompass various forms of combat, including traditional battles, guerrilla warfare, and psychological operations. One of the most comprehensive examples of total war occurred during World War II, when Germany, the Soviet Union, and Japan emerged as major belligerents. The war involved a global conflict between the Axis powers and the Allies, with fighting occurring in Europe, Asia, and Africa. During World War II, cities such as Dresden and Tokyo were firebombed, resulting in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of civilians. These attacks were aimed at breaking the enemy's will to fight by destroying their cities and industries. However, they often resulted in the indiscriminate killing of civilians and raised significant ethical questions about the conduct of war. Total war is a controversial concept, as it often involves the blurring of lines between military and civilian targets and raises questions about the proportionality of military action and the protection of civilian lives. Number 5. Guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare is a military tactic that involves small groups of fighters using unconventional methods to harass and weaken a larger, more powerful force. Guerrilla tactics typically include ambushes, sabotage, and hit-and-run attacks, which aim to wear down the enemy over time rather than through direct confrontation. One of the most famous examples of guerrilla warfare occurred during the Vietnam War, when the Viet Cong, a communist-led guerrilla force, fought against the U.S. military. The Viet Cong's knowledge of the local terrain and their ability to blend in with the civilian population made them difficult to track and eliminate. Despite the superior firepower of the U.S. military, the Viet Cong's guerrilla tactics proved effective in wearing down the enemy and ultimately contributing to the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Vietnam. Guerrilla warfare can be brutal and often results in civilian casualties, as non-combatants can be caught in the crossfire or targeted as collaborators. Additionally, it can prolong conflicts and make it difficult to achieve clear military victories. Number 4. Nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons are weapons of mass destruction that derive their destructive power from nuclear reactions. The first atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima in 1945 during World War II, followed by another on Nagasaki shortly after. These bombings resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people and the subsequent end of World War II. Since then, several countries have developed nuclear weapons, including the United States, Russia, China, and France. The use of nuclear weapons raises profound ethical and environmental concerns. Not only do they cause massive loss of life, but they also leave behind radioactive contamination that can persist for generations. The development of nuclear weapons has led to a global arms race, and the threat of mutually assured destruction has shaped international relations for decades. Number 3. Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg, which translates to lightning war in English, is a military tactic that involves a rapid and overwhelming attack using a combination of air and ground forces. Developed by the German military in the 1930s, Blitzkrieg was first used in the 1939 invasion of Poland, where German forces quickly advanced deep into enemy territory, bypassing strong points and concentrating their forces on vulnerable areas. The tactic proved highly effective in achieving quick and decisive victories. However, Blitzkrieg often involves heavy bombing of civilian areas, which can result in significant loss of life and destruction of civilian infrastructure. The use of Blitzkrieg in modern warfare raises ethical questions about the targeting of civilian areas and the proportionality of military responses. Number 2. Psychological warfare. Psychological warfare, also known as PSYOPs, refers to the use of psychological tactics and methods to influence the attitudes and behaviors of individuals or groups in a military or political context. One example of psychological warfare is the practice of massacring one city to intimidate other nearby settlements into surrendering without a fight. This was a common tactic used by the Mongols in the 13th century as they expanded their empire across Asia and Europe. By slaughtering the inhabitants of a city, the Mongols sent a message to neighboring settlements that resistance was futile and that surrender would result in fewer casualties. In modern warfare, psychological warfare tactics can include leaflet drops, propaganda broadcasts, and the use of loudspeakers to deliver messages to enemy forces or civilian populations. The effectiveness of psychological warfare can vary depending on factors such as the target audience, the message, and the methods used to deliver it. Number 1. Drone warfare. Drone warfare involves the use of unmanned aerial vehicles, commonly referred to as drones, to carry out military operations remotely. Drones can be equipped with various types of weaponry, including bombs, missiles, and machine guns, allowing them to engage targets with minimal risk to the operator. The United States has been a pioneer in the use of drone warfare, particularly in countries like Afghanistan and Pakistan. Drones have been used to target suspected terrorists and insurgents, often with the support of real-time intelligence gathered through surveillance drones. Drone warfare has raised various ethical dilemmas, including the use of artificial intelligence in targeting and the potential for civilian casualties due to the remote nature of drone operations. This detachment can desensitize operators to the human cost of war. Constant surveillance by drones can also create a climate of fear and uncertainty in targeted regions, blurring the line between combatants and civilians. In conclusion, these 10 ruthless war techniques and systems reflect the darker aspects of human history and serve as reminders of the devastating consequences of conflict. From the scorched earth policy to drone warfare, each technique has left an indelible mark on the course of history, shaping not only military strategies but also the lives of countless individuals. As we learn from these past conflicts, it is essential to strive for peaceful resolutions to disputes and promote ethical conduct in warfare to prevent such atrocities from repeating themselves. You can click here to watch more videos.